All right, so next thing I've got here, energy sources. What are some of your favorites? Is there any that you've kind of heard about and are like, wow, that's, even if it's not like something that's kind of shovel ready, like this sounds like a cool thing?
Well, what people are telling me, I mean, I've gone and sat down with people for hours on this who are experts. But here's what people are telling me. Michigan is the fourth best state in the union for wind power. And that we could generate enough wind power to provide 6 times as much electricity as we're now using in Michigan. And you know, I don't know if you saw it, about 2 weeks ago, Google just did a $250 million investment in putting in a whole backbone of windmills 20 miles out of sight of the land along the East Coast from New Jersey down to Virginia, which I think is going to create a model. We could put those windmills out there beyond the visual lines, and people wouldn't be complaining about that.
Oh, they'd still be complaining. I mean, come on, let's get real. They'll find a reason.
Well, at least it would ease it a little bit. And you know, instead of sending all our money outside of the state for coal and other stuff, we'd be generating our own electricity here, and I think that's great.
All right, getting a little away from direct environmental stuff, localization versus centralization of production. So whether it's agriculture or whether it's industry, we've outsourced a lot of jobs. With NAFTA, we've sent a lot of jobs south. We give tax breaks to companies who outsource. We've gotten rid of any kind of import tariffs. Right. Is there any way out of this? I mean, where do we start?
I think it's very complex. I think I could give you a very self-assured, simple solution, and I'd be lying. Yeah. I think this is a very difficult thing here. I was just watching the other day, there's a guy named Mason who is BBC's economic reporter. He's just written a book on this, talking about how the globalization of the workforce is like a critical issue of our time. Because, you know, I mean, China, India, I mean, they're developing the same kinds of technologies that we got here, and how are our guys going to compete with them? And it's very complex. But one thing is for sure, that we should, when we have done these international trade agreements like NAFTA, we put nothing in there about labor regulations or about environmental regulations. And so we made our people compete with people in other countries where there are no labor laws and there's just complete exploitation of the workers. And our people can't compete with that. That's got to change. There's got to be some international regulations about at least paying people living wages in their own country. But that's not going to solve the whole thing. I really think that the answer has to be in research and development, and improving technologies which make us much more competitive with the rest of the world. And also investing in our physical and human infrastructure so that we can compete with other countries in the world.
Great. Yeah, sounds good. Speaking of infrastructure, transportation system. We've got a crumbling highway system. We've got a rail system that hasn't been touched in the better part of, 6 decades? I mean, it's been forever. How committed are you to each one? You know, where do you see that kind of balance falling? And then also with cars, what's your favorite kind of new car, alternative energy car technology?
Well, first of all, we do need a high-speed rail system that's comparable to what is going on in Europe and in other industrialized countries in the world. They have invested huge amounts of money into that, and we've invested a pittance into that. Now, I have some friends around here, the mayor of New Buffalo. He's been like a pioneer and trying to get high-speed rail lines in Michigan between Chicago and Detroit. And, you know, he has the vision of people being able to work in Chicago and take a train out in the morning, come back at night, and in these high-speed trains. So we have to invest in that. I mean, to be competitive with the rest of the world. The other thing is you have to take a long-term view and a short-term view. Short-term, people that live out in the countryside, don't have access to public transportation, and it's very difficult to provide that for them. So they have to have some kind of their own vehicles out there. And so we have to make these as energy efficient as possible. I think it's encouraging that we're moving toward electric cars. But in the end, you know, you're absolutely right. Fossil fuel has probably hit our peak now, and when our way down, it's going to get more and more difficult.
Well, American oil production already peaked.
Yeah.
Global production, you know, if you trust the estimates, if you trust the math that's been done, we're looking at anywhere between it's already peaked to 20 years. And
even right now, to get at this stuff is more and more difficult, and that's what the Gulf BP's terrible leak. And you see with all these different sources of energy, you see the cave-ins in the mines that are just becoming commonplace now. You know, we've taken all this stuff, and now we're hitting the crisis where, wow, how are we going to do this? We need to find a new way. You know, I do think that we were making tremendous progress in energy efficiency in cars, and then we took the regulations off that. I think California's on the right track, requiring very high mileage per gallon and very little pollution on that. I think that's the way we all have to go in the temporary. Long term, we really got to rethink how we get people where they need to go, which also emphasizes, again, the importance of local building locally.
Definitely. All right, so we're running out of time. So just to wrap up, what are you doing in your personal life in terms of, I hate to say going green because it's become so cliche. You talked about how you used to have solar panels on your house, which I didn't know, and I think that's really cool. What are some other things that you're doing, just in case the listeners are curious?
My wife is a crusader on this. She's got a button that says recovering oil addict. So whenever we're going someplace, she says, okay, let's get a couple people in the car. We're going to save on the oil. She's an amazing recycler. She doesn't use much energy in the house, even when I'm freezing. And we don't have an air conditioner in the house. So she's very, very conscious, and she makes me very, very conscious of how we do this. I follow her lead, and we just had an energy audit in our house where we had a guy come in, a friend of ours, and do a whole energy audit in our house and point out places where we could be more energy efficient, and we're trying to work on that. So, I mean, we're doing those things that we can. We know, however, that that's not enough. Yep. That there has to be national policies that are really going to save on it. So we're trying to reach out to that. We'd love to have solar panels on there if we could get the right incentives to do that, because we can't afford it unless we do that.
Sure. Yeah. You do what you can with what you've got and work towards larger collective change in your spare time.
That's
right. Yeah, there we go. All right, well, Don, I really appreciate you coming in. We didn't get to everything, but I had a ridiculously long list, so it's been great talking to you.
Thanks an awful lot, Joe. I really appreciate it. This was really fun.
All right. Have a great day, Don.